Hello and welcome to the Planner Pals podcast, a podcast hosted by two true Planner Pals. My name is Mark, and I go by Mark Your Pages.
And I am Jess, or Jashi Corinne, and in today's episode, we're going to be looking at the notebooks that we love. They're our ride or dies, or we're their ride or dies. I'm still not sure about how that works. I'm not good with the idiom. I also don't know if it's an idiom, but we're going to be talking about that. And I feel like some people can already guess what number one is, but don't spoil it for other people. We're going to get into this.
Yeah, it's going to be a fantastic episode talking about our favorite journals, not just for bullet journaling, but just all together. We know that our Planner Pals don't just bullet journal. While we love that, we also like to have fun with other notebooks too. But before we get into our episode, we have to thank you all again. It is the biggest place for all of the coolest things you could ever collect ever, the comment section. Thank you all so much for your feedback on all the things that you can't say no to as well. It makes us feel a lot less worse about not saying no to our favorite things.
Yeah, I'm just glad that there are other people out there who also have a hard time with being a completionist when it comes to their pen sets or whatever else, hoarding stickers like a dragon and then not wanting to put them down because you're just worried it's not going to be perfect. As said, I'm trying to get out of that mindset, but I am struggling.
It's definitely not an easy thing to do, but I think the best thing that you can kind of do is really take on the task of declutter. And I know you've been doing that. I've been doing that as well as we've gone through, which was a perfect setup for today's episode as we talk about our favorite types of notebooks, because you and I both have been really editing through our notebooks, which I think, at least for me, I'm sure it's the same for you as well. It does make you think about them for a second. What did I like about this notebook? Or I didn't like about this notebook and I'm going to put it into a new home. So Jess, as we get into it, first, you want to start with one of your favorite notebooks that you just love so much and want to share with the Planner Pals?
So my first favorite notebook was actually an interesting one because you'd think that as a bullet journaler and, with the rainbow and all of that kind of thing, it would be one of those 160 GSM white dot grid, ultra thick paper kind of brands. But it's actually one of the cheapest notebooks I own. And I love it so much just because it really takes the pressure off. It makes it feel like I could really put anything in there. I can be messy. I can be scribbly, to the extent where anytime I use this notebook, I do just call it my scribble book. And that one is the Kokuyo ring bound notebook, but the rings are really soft and flexible, so they're actually really good for left-handed people too. I'm not left-handed. If I tried to write with my left hand, it would turn out just like a heinous mess. We're not gonna try it. But I know that that's a notebook that a lot of people who are left-handed, who like ring bound but don't like the rings getting in their way, actually do enjoy using as well.
Yeah, it's definitely something as a lefty, that I am a lefty, you do think about. I mean, growing up, I didn't know there was a choice. I think especially in school, it's the 3-ring binder, it's the big, huge ones. You're constantly fighting against that son of a bitch as you're trying to just take down your elementary and middle school notes. It wasn't until later on where I was like, oh, there are other options. I feel like more and more stuff came out. I mean, I wish, honestly, that I had my knowledge of stationery now as back then. I feel like I would have just enjoyed school so much more because I just felt like I was constantly fighting the clips or getting your finger stuck in those clips too. When you're closing, it was an absolute nightmare. So I definitely appreciate a good lefty friendly ring notebook.
Yeah, very that. I find that this one in particular, you don't have necessarily the flexibility of being able to reorganize or rearrange the pages because the ring itself is kind of inbuilt in there. But the fact that it's soft and squishy also kind of acts as a fidget tool almost. It's just me kind of pressing on the squishy rings and avoiding what I'm supposed to be doing. Still fun though. Still makes it for an enjoyable use. Also the fact that it isn't actually a dot grid, it's a regular grid. And I definitely think that we need to have more regular grid notebooks, especially in the 160 GSM bright white paper space, just because that's usually the preference when it comes to a bullet journal at least. But I find that doing things like graphs or being able to plot things out and stuff, having those guidelines, they're quite faint, but having them there makes it really enjoyable to use.
Yeah, I think that the grid notebooks are ones that I'll pull a few of them out every now and again and do a spread or whatever just to kind of mix it up. But you're right. But it has to be a light line. The ones that I have, I feel are really dark and I like it. Aesthetically, it looks really cool. I can still read what I'm writing on. It's not the worst thing in the world. But at the same time, it's you got a totally different look going on. And you're right, graphs and trackers and stuff, it just makes it a bazillion times easier than trying to find the dots and the lines, especially when you write over them. It's all just there, really nice indeed. And I think it's also just fun to play with different types of papers too. So I'm all about that.
Yeah, and talking about the different types of papers, given the fact that pretty much every other notebook I use is that kind of ultra thick type of paper and usually doesn't have a coating, this one I believe does have a coating, which also makes it my favorite to use my fountain pen in, which is kind of funny. It's like my nicest pen in my cheapest notebook.
Well, sometimes I think you need to have that freedom of it where you're not being so protective over your paper and what you put in it. And you can kind of just make a mess. I do that a lot in a lot of my journals that aren't my bullet journal. If I'm just scratching down notes or doing whatever or just having fun. I mean, sometimes I'll do the same thing. I'll be like, I'm just going to play test with some ink today and use it in a notebook that I know is just, it's not for fountain pens. It will bleed through the paper. Like I know it's going to, but I just am not worried about it. And they usually are the least expensive ones too, because then you're like, you don't feel so bad about kind of like wasting the paper or just playing inside of it. It does definitely take it down a lot of that stress and anxiety about trying to be perfect. So I'm right there with you. I think a lot of the times those are great for like thinking about like ideas for spread. So a lot of those like R&D notebooks that we talk about, it's almost like a pre R&D notebook where you can be super messy and figure it out, and then maybe put like a little bit more refined idea into one of these other notebooks for like ideation and trying stuff out.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think that also the fact that I just call it the scribble book also just takes the pressure off. It's like, no, the intention here is to be a mess, to be messy. And that's why it's definitely one of my kind of like staples in my collection. I will continue to keep like, accumulating those ones because I really do love them. But what would be one of your favorites?
Yeah, so as I've been going through my notebooks, I've played around with a lot of notebooks. I think one of my favorite things to do is find different types of notebooks, and I especially love it when they find me. So Antel Design is someone I've actually worked with, I've done videos for before. And what I really liked about them is their Notes to Work series. Like, it's a beautiful notebook, it's bound, but my favorite part of this, Jess, is that it is magnetic binding. So you just pop them out and you can use them and do whatever you want, and you pop them back in, and there's so many different accessories and things that you can do with it. And the other really cool thing about it is you can put any type of paper that you want into these notebooks. So if you do want that scratch pad type thing, you can just fold over some paper. It comes with a really cool punch that you can punch in and kind of put them in. So it's a little bit of like a DIY kind of approach, but you can also take the paper out and easily slide it back in because there's a rubber band around that binding that helps you do that. Now, I will say, I don't do that a lot because for me, I don't have to worry about taking paper out. I think in a lot of their marketing, they're like, oh, if you're sharing notes around the table. And I'm like, I'm not sharing my notes with anybody. You're not messing up my flow.
It's exactly that though. Like, keep your nasty Bics away from my beautiful paper.
Nobody wants an unsolicited Bic in their notebook, and just, keep those things away from us. We don't want to see it.
Yeah, I love that idea of like a magnetic system. I think that like things like traveler systems and ring bound systems and stuff where you can really chop and change things and switch things out so you can effectively make your perfect planner or notebook system or whatever. They're very interesting. But the magnetic one in particular, I haven't seen that anywhere else. I'm curious about it, and now I'm like, oh gosh, do I need to go and get this notebook and then bring that into my stash as well? No, you just decluttered 129 notebooks. We do not need more. Unless they're some of your favorites, then like we'll call an exception for that. But in terms of like the being able to change it out and being able to switch out the papers and such, do you think that you could use it with like only particular like weights of paper, or would it be fine to use with like 160 really really thick cardstock type thing? What do you reckon?
You can do whatever you want with it. So I've actually used everything from like very thin graph paper, because what's great is you can put as much as that paper that'll fit inside of that metal binding. So it limits itself. So if you're using thicker paper, which I ended up buying like 160 GSM dot grid just off of like Amazon, for instance, and was able to cut it a little bit. That's the only thing I didn't love about it though, is like you had to like cut your paper a certain size to fit it in there, but you could get the paper you wanted and you can kind of add it right in there, and you can use it however you want.
Yeah, no, I'm all about trying different things. Like, I had 2 years there in particular that I cycled through a bunch of different size notebooks to trial those out. So I went from like A5 to B5 to Travelers, then went back to A5 because I was like, oh my God, no, I just need something that's familiar. And then tried out the B6, tried out the Square. Like, it was really interesting getting to see like how our regular planning kind of style would work in a different size, because there's a lot of things that we kind of just take for granted almost in working with the same size on repeat. Like, for instance, the fact that a vertical log looks weird in a B5. I personally feel it looks weird in a B5 because there's just so much extra space. And then people are like, oh, you can fill it with decoration. I'm like, no, it's too hard. I don't want to do it. This is the worst.
That's what I really got into squares for myself, because the B5 had that weird kind of thing. I always say what I love about a square notebook. It's like the comfortability size of an A5 with the width of a B5, right? You kind of have this perfect dimension inside of there. But again, that's what I like about these two. And also the thing I didn't mention is that you can also print out templates yourself too. They sell them, but if you're the type of person that doesn't want to have to buy your own paper or try something different, they have this whole template gallery that's really cool. So I used to use it for project planning. Like I used to be like a few months at a time. I did it for content planning. You can do it for all kinds of really cool stuff. So I'm a really big fan of it. I think it's been really cool. And because I get to kind of mix and match, and that makes the little dopamine hit for me. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to try this out. And I do it for a few months, and then I'm over it. I don't want to print out anymore.
No, that's very fair. I do think that there is like definitely a benefit with those kind of systems where you can bring in those types of elements. Like you can bring in what I'm going to call like external paper. So whether that's like templates or just regular paper or whatever, and just get to trial these things out without committing to like a full notebook of that thing or a full planner of that thing as well. Because like if you buy a planner for the year, usually they're kind of spenny kind of a thing. So you kind of have that, I don't know, sunk cost fallacy. Like I have to finish using this because I put all this money into it and maybe time setting it up and whatever. But being able to give yourself like a test run in that kind of system is pretty cool. Also, in thinking about that, it's kind of to me like the Neapolitan almost, like the Neapolitan journal that they had from Archer and Olive. It's like you get your black and your white and your craft paper and you can kind of try and change them up. The problem with that one I found was that there's only like, so many pages of one and I wouldn't get a full month in that. So it's like in the middle of a month, you're switching from white paper to black paper, but the theme doesn't really work for that. So I was then going to like the next white paper section to keep on with the white paper, made for a very interestingly organized notebook. And I feel like the system you're talking about could kind of solve that a little bit because you could just shove more pages in.
Yeah, it's definitely a very cool one. But, all right, Jess, let's go into your next one. What's your number two? Or yeah, I guess number two, because we're going up to number one.
Going up to number one. Alrighty, number two. So this one in particular, I really love because they are constantly coming out with new designs. So their range in terms of designs just for the covers is really great. I appreciate having a lot of like eye candy to pick from. Makes my heart happy. But also I found that this brand in particular had a really good range of different types of paper and like, dot grid versus lines versus blank, yada yada. They also have started to bring more sizes into their lineup, which is really cool. In particular, the one that's quite exciting is that they have brought square notebooks into their lineup, which is not something that's all that common. And in particular, given that my favorite square brand, which we'll talk about later, and you all know what it is, but it's fine, no spoilers, shh, all right? My favorite square brand, they sell out quickly. They do sell out quickly, but so having another brand that I can rely on for square notebooks is kind of exciting. This one is Tifosi. I have, quite a few notebooks from them in some very lovely colors, very lovely designs. At the moment, they seem to be like really into birds, which like birds isn't really my thing, but some of their designs with birds look very like fairy tale kind of thing. It feels like a fairy tale book that like you're going to put all of your beautiful once upon a time stories in. Gorgeous colors, very pretty designs, and that's why I like them.
They're definitely cool. I've only had one. I think it's probably when they first were starting to come out. I know they were sending out some notebooks to different people. Don't think we loved that paper necessarily. I know that they've fixed it because you've done some work with them and have a number of the notebooks. But I will agree, their covers are gorgeous. Like seriously, like nothing else that I've seen out there. And you and I have talked a lot recently too about a lot of the full cover designs, and they're just amazing. They're foiled and they're very intricate and detailed, and they are very, very pretty. I haven't tried any of them since that original one, just because I have a ton of other notebooks, and I was kind of bummed out about the paper in that very first one, since it was, I forget what it was, like stone washed or...
I have no idea what it was, but it was slippy. I am very glad that they changed their paper since that one. In particular, that one had like the sharp corners as well, which makes for my personal thinking, like that's an aggressive notebook. That notebook's trying to get me type of a thing. But since then, the ones that I've been getting from them, they do have a paper that's more kind of typical with what I like. Not so slippy, not so like, long drying times or anything like that. I think that you would like them. It's more so just like akin to our number one kind of paper.
Yeah, well, it's good that they changed that. I mean, I'm sure they got a lot of feedback because the paper really does make such a big difference in notebooks. I know all of the planner pals know that. That's probably one of the most important things, aside from the designs that are on the cover of these notebooks, is how well that paper performs. And especially if you're using different type of materials. I remember when I used that original paper, again, I'm sorry to keep going back in there, but I just remember it so very vividly because I was using like very inky pens and everything else. And I was like, okay. And I remember putting ink in there and like waiting and waiting and waiting. I think it was almost over a minute for some of this ink to dry. And I was like, this is just not going to work for me. And so I don't know a whole lot about paper necessarily, like on the back end of things, like what it's made out of, all the qualities or the makers or things like that. But I definitely appreciate like when people do know, but when before I buy a notebook, I can see someone really using it to know if it's right, because it does make a really big difference.
No, I would very much agree with that. And I think that because they do have a varied kind of range in terms of their paper, like both type and also just styling, it can be a little bit tricky to know upfront which one you're going to get. I've only found that has been that one notebook, that one design that has the super slippy paper, and every other one that I've had with them since has been the nice regular, not slippy, actual good drying time papers, which makes them really great for R&D notebooks, especially because they have a lower price point and they have free shipping to like 34 different places or something. One of those places is where I'm based, which is definitely saying something, because living at the ass end of the world, shipping is heinous, shipping is killer. So it's really nice to have somewhere that I can get notebooks from where it's not going to cost me like double or like edging towards triple the price because I need to pay the shipping on top of the notebook cost.
Yeah, it makes a really big difference for you. I feel bad every time you buy a notebook. It's just, shipping it to the ass end of the world, as you like to say. It costs so much money to do that. And I feel like over the years, it's just getting like more and more and more. So that's fantastic if you have a opportunity with a lot of them to do that. And to me, from something we haven't really talked about so far, but is a really important part of why we also like certain notebook brands, is like that shows that they are trying to have a larger international audience when they make those things more easily available. They can get to you. It's not costing you a crap ton of money, maybe a little bit more, but that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I know that like it's not just New Zealand that suffers from this. Depending on like where certain brands are based and such, you have people in the UK and Europe and stuff who are also paying out the nose for different brands and notebooks that they want to bring into their stashes. But what would be your number two?
So my number two is one that is very cool. I like it a lot. It's the Night Owl Journal from Owl Paper. So Marissa owns this. She's a very small business. She's doing this all on her own. I actually was just chatting with her today because she's starting to maybe experiment with some other sizes, which I'm really excited about. But she sells her planners, which are really neat. She actually built these with a bullet journaler in mind, but it is predated and then a lot of the pages are pre-filled out. It's also great paper, but a lot of them are not. So like the whole idea behind hers is she's like, okay, here's the things that you need in your normal journal, right? You have space for an index. You have your monthlies, right? She also knows that people like a weekly view, but also want room to be able to write beyond just like what's on those weeks. And I really liked it a lot. Now, I always, me in this paper, tomorrow, no.
Tomorrow paper strikes again. I love it.
Why can't I say it the right way, Jess?
I don't know.
Tomoe River paper. So there's been like a change in that paper supposedly, and like so she actually still has like the good paper. She was just talking about it the other day. But like this whole idea is that like you've got good paper, you've got a really good layout, and it was something that I actually never thought that I was going to try. But she had sent me one. Now the one that she sent me was bright pink, so I got to customize it with all of these cool stickers, which turned out very cool. But I actually really loved using this notebook because it like gave me the opportunity to like play around with different things I wouldn't normally do. There's also like a calendar inside of here, so I could do time blocking and all kinds of cool things inside of it. And you can either buy the next of the year if you want, buy them at the same time. She's been playing around with more colors and stuff like that too. So I'm just like totally like oohing and ahhing over this because I really love the idea of these and like everything that she puts into it. So it's why it's one of my favorites. I'm actually starting to use these for ink swatches in the near future, like the older ones that I have that I didn't use the full notebook because I switched out of it. So, it's just, fun.
Several points because
sorry, that was a lot.
Sorry, I'm just being dick. But no, I think that's a good point though. Like you kind of mentioned this idea of like being able to trial things. Love that. Also, kind of knowing that there are going to be specific notebooks that are going to be good for particular functions. So, like you mentioned, you didn't really mind that this had the thinner paper because you were using it in conjunction with something else that was your kind of preferred paper type. Or like for me with the Kokuyo, it's like that's a scribble book. It doesn't need the ultra deluxe paper or anything, and I'm just going to be really messy in there. So it's totally cool that it's thinner. But even just flipping through the scribble book and having notes that are just, random and maybe a mind map and then some doodles and then whatever else, it's very satisfying to have a completed notebook, even if it isn't completed with things that are in the moment aesthetic or beautiful or anything like that. A used notebook is the best notebook. That's what I'm going to say because it's just very satisfying. It feels good. It feels like an accomplishment, especially if you're the kind of person who picks up a notebook being like, this is going to be the notebook that changes my life. And then you use 2 pages and then you put it on the back of the shelf and never look at it again. Wah, wah.
Well, that's why you have to find like new homes for it. Like I said, even though I only used like the first few pages of this one, I started using it for ink swatches, right? And just kind of finding new uses for notebook is great. I actually, you were just saying finished a notebook. When I was going through my notebooks, I realized that I actually finished this whole like R&D sketch journal that I have. I need to do a flip through of it on YouTube because I've done a video in a minute. But just, the idea of finishing that. And then I'm thinking, what do I do with it though? Like, it's just a sketchbook. I don't really need a lot that's inside of there. Like, am I going to throw this away after I do this flip through? Because I really don't have a need for it anymore. It served its purpose.
I'm going to put that down as a personal preference type thing because I will not throw away my ones that I've used. It is very rare for me to actually part with one that I have completed, mainly because I use it as reference material for the channel or anything like that. But anything that's like a genuine scribble book, I have parted with. It was painful in the moment, but it's one of those things that like parting with anything in the moment is painful. Like if you're in a decluttering kind of state of mind or whatever, it's like, oh gosh, tension. What if I need this, rah, rah. And then the week passes and then you don't even remember. Like I was sitting here thinking, did I throw out that scribble book? Is it still here? Is it in the room with us? No, it's gone. It's been gone for like a month and a half now, and I just forgot that I got rid of it.
Yeah, I would never get rid of a used like bullet journal, something like that. But this is just a sketch one where I'm just like, yeah, had some ideas. I think I was probably using it for some like affiliate stuff or paid content or whatever. It's like that had a purpose. But it is one of those things though, where I was just like flipping through and I was like, wait, like there's still some good pages. I was like, no, there's not. This feels really good. I like it. The one down, 200 to go.
Yeah, progress is progress. We can still be proud of that. But knowing that our number one is the same, what would be the first reason that you love them so much?
All right, so everyone's guessed by now. We are definitely talking about our journal of notebooks. Let's not beat around the bush anymore. There's a whole lot of reasons, and I will not try to go on a tirade like I did on that last one so that we can have a conversation today. I would say that I think the reason that our journal of notebooks are my favorite is because after coming from notebooks that ghosted and bled through, and I was such a disbeliever that any notebook paper could actually not ghost through, it was the most amazing feeling to use one page heavily and then flip it over and feel like I was actually on a fresh new page. That to me is what honestly made me fall in love with their notebooks first, was the fact that I never felt like I was wasting paper and I always felt like I was starting on a nice new clean page.
No, that is very fair. That was the reason why I was so interested in them to start with, because back when I first got into Archer and Olive notebooks, 160 GSM notebooks were not the normal. Like they're much more the normal now, but back then it was everybody was in their LT 1917s or their Scribbles That Matter. I was in a Scribbles That Matter. So another thing that I really loved about moving from Scribbles That Matter in particular, like just to throw them under the bus a little bit, sorry, but moving from a notebook that had branding on the outside of the notebook to no branding on the outside, that was also a selling point for me. I'm like, I don't want to be like toting around my notebook and just be like with your brand name printed on the back in quite large text. Actually, I think it was on the front in quite large text.
And didn't I've never thought about that. I only ever think I had never Scribble. I Dingbats was the one that I had. I don't think I ever had a Scribble That Matters. I never got into that, but it does make a big deal. I mean, the cover design is definitely the other reason, that I really fell in love with them a lot. There's so many different ideas and things like that. And, I was just thinking about this the other day. I was telling you before we started recording today that there's the Mind Journal, which is a journal I've looked at before. Like they had messaged me to say that they were, I guess, not going to be in business anymore. And I was thinking about it and I was like, I wonder why like what from a notebook business perspective, like keeps people in business? Obviously, a good idea, good quality branding. But the other thing that I really love about Archer and Olive, and I know some people they like it, but they don't like it, is that it is forever changing. There's always a new season, a new design, new things that are coming out. I honestly don't know that a lot of notebook companies are really doing that. Planners, yes. Like I know that there's like the seasonal planners, teacher planners, yearly planners, all of that, Aaron Condren, whatever those, all of that stuff. I don't know what that genre is called, but Archer and Olive also consistently delivers with like really cool designs. And even when they're not really delivering and we all complain about it, like they continuously are revamping, retrying, and doing new things, which also continuously keeps me excited. Like I think that's how they hook us. They know what they're doing.
Oh, definitely. They are in the knowledge space of marketing and such, very much that. I think that in terms of the design aspect of it, it also is really nice to know that like people are designing that. And I especially in the day and age of computer generated imagery and all of that kind of thing, knowing the people behind the designs, knowing who is going and doing those things and putting their time, effort, and energy to bring us products that are absolutely gorgeous. I also think that's really special. Like, obviously, we both have a kind of personal connection with Archer and Olive, having worked on their what was previously called the design team. Such a misnomer. Like, so many people like, oh, are you designing the notebooks? No, definitely not. We were writing blog posts and making reels. Ugh, reels.
It was good. As a person who got to do that and actually design it, like, that was something that was really cool. And it gave me a totally new insight on that. It also made me feel like bad when I've like talked poorly about some of their notebook designs before, because doing it myself, I realized there's a lot that goes into it. And then like to put something out and then for people not to respond well to it, it made me definitely like feel a lot different, very empathetic to the designers that do that. But you're right. Like it's cool to get to know them and see that. I wish we had a little bit more influence, but like no one will tell us anything usually in advance. And that's the thing too, is like they have to like design these notebooks so far in advance. And like you said, they know all the marketing stuff and what's going on and like what's hot and what's not for the most part. To think that like some cases they're designing these like 6 months to a year in advance, like that's wild to me. Like my brain doesn't work more than like a week or two in advance. I can't imagine like that far ahead, but I just feel like most of the time they're hitting the nail on the head with designs.
I'm very impressed. I don't even know how one could do that. Like, look into the crystal ball. Is blue going to be hot next year? Blue's always hot. They're always going to have blue journals. The blue joe will never die. But no, I think it is nice to be able to just know that there are people behind it, like you kind of were talking about with the idea of not being too mean to the designs because you also know the people behind them. Because I don't know, did you get any negative, quote, quote, negative feedback about your design? I love your design. It's still on my shelf. I didn't declutter it.
No, I think
That sounds like I did. That sounded really fake. I didn't declutter it. It's like proof of life. She's here. She's here.
He's living his best life over there. No, I didn't get any criticism on the design on the outside. The only criticism I actually have for it as well is I wish the page numbers were a little bit darker, because now using this as my full-time journal, I was just threading the other day with a new page on one of my collections, and I had a really hard time like seeing the page numbers. And I was like, if I ever got the chance to do this again, I would make it a little bit darker. And I kept it light because I know a lot of the reasons they don't put page numbers in their notebooks is not everyone uses page numbers. But I was like, well, hell, if I'm going to get the chance to do it, I'm doing it now. But it was just one of those things where that was the only piece, is that people, I'm not even hard of seeing, right? Like I don't have any visual impairments and I have a hard time. I can only imagine someone else with visual impairments. Like they probably can't see it at all. But other than that, no. Like the only person actually that had a criticism is when I had done the designs originally and I had designed the spine, which had a different thing here. I had showed my wife and she's like, what's Hoda? And I was like, what? And she was like, it says Hoda on the side of your notebook. And so the shapes, for whatever reason, like spelled it out. So it had to get changed because I was like, oh my gosh, like I would have never ever seen that. But that was like kind of the whole thing with the notebook design, was that it was supposed to like have a lot of like cool to find things inside of it. Unbeknownst to me, it also spelled out words. Like thank goodness it didn't say anything like graphic or anything else like that, because that would have been very unintentional and very unfortunate. But that was the only thing I feel like from a feedback standpoint.
I'm sure that the marketing team would have had a fun spin on it, you would have been fine. But yeah, it's probably good to spot that ahead of time so it doesn't go out for full printing with the Hoda on it. Yeah, I think that okay, if we're, balanced reviews here, if there was one thing that makes me a little sad about Archer and Olive is that it feels like every single item I have from them is limited edition, because it kind of is. Like, once they sell out, it very rarely comes back unless they do one of those like bring back the favorites. We love bring back the favorites because then you actually get the opportunity to get the favorites that you missed out on because the releases happened at 2 a.m. your time and you didn't want to sacrifice your sleep to get a notebook, and then you woke up and they were sold out and now you're depressed. Doesn't always work like that because I just wake up for it. I must be there at release. I must get my notebooks. But everything being kind of limited edition or feeling limited edition, that is a bit of a pain point. So like those designs that they released several years ago, not being able to just like easily jump on, get them at any time, that makes me a little bit sad.
It does for me as well, but I think that's why I also love it so much. It's like anything that you collect that's limited edition, like this whole like Labubu phase thing that's happening right now, right? Like the whole idea behind it is just like to find like these special or rare ones and show them off. And I guess for now, at least, right? Like you get what you get. I don't really know how it all exactly works. I just see everyone talking about them. They're on the boardwalk. Everyone's talking about them. But like the notebooks, though, like when I was decluttering my own and I opened them up and I was like, it's the original B design. Like that was like the one you had to have, right? And a lot of like the old like the wizard one they had for like Halloween, like the broom and the potion bottle and the wand and all of that. I want to use them. I will, but just also knowing that like I can't get another one of those immediately is a bummer. And I know that was such a really big sticking point. And I know something too that they've really worked on too, this whole idea of like having to get online at then or else it's selling out and you're never going to get it again. Like I appreciate also, if we're talking about things we do like about them, from that negative is that they are listening to their customers. They are there to try to make it a good experience for them. They're also here to make money at the end of the day. Let's just be honest, right? But the fact that like they are doing like pre-orders for designs that people really like so they can get a hold of them. But then the season moves into the next one. And so it's kind of, they got to sell what they're doing, right? And I think like that is just a part of business. And again, we have this luxury and like insider knowledge to know them, and we know more about the business than probably the average person does just because we've been a part of it to a certain extent. But while I don't love it, I know people don't love it, I also kind of like it because I am that type of person that like to be able to say like I have this, but it bums me out when people are like, Mark, when can I get your notebook again? I'm like, you can't because they sold out. They don't have it anymore.
Well, especially like one of the very few things that we actually did get to design when it was the design team were the pins or the like, lapel pin badges type thing. My badge sold out in like an hour. And so they were putting together the promo marketing materials and stuff for it to release over the next couple of days. And so they released the video 2 days later. I'm like, oh, look, there's that pin that you can't get anymore. Da, 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 da.
That's always hard, especially like when we do our like unboxings or reviews or things like that. And you're just like, oh, I got this beautiful notebook. I mean, I'd love for you to be able to get it, but you can't because they're gone.
And now it's just like we're rubbing it in like, nah, 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 nah. It's so mean.
And it's so hard too because you also don't know when stuff is gonna like sell out or in some cases like be discontinued. Like I have this like Uniball you can like write on everything, and I did this whole like all my favorite stationery things, and literally like I had just bought like 3 or 4 of them off of Amazon not long ago. I put out the video. People are like, I have to have that pen. And they go to like use the link. They're like, oh no, like they're discontinued. I was like, what do you mean? I literally just got them delivered to my house. They're like, they are not available. I looked online. I looked on the website. Like they've discontinued that pen. And I was like, oh, well, now that lives out there and people, I'm going to, it's like probably one of the first things I'm like, I love this pen. It writes on everything. And then no one can ever get it. It's not the best thing in the world, but like, at least, I'm passionate.
At least I'm enthusiastic about it. You can share my joy from a distance. I think that, again, they are my number one for a reason. Absolutely love them. But one of the things that is a bit of a curse is I live in New Zealand. Shipping is expensive, which we do have the wholesalers or the stockists and such, and they have an international list for that, which I do very much appreciate because it means that people who live a little further afield can get those at a more reasonable rate. It is still more reasonable for me to pay Archer and Olive specifically rather than go to a stockist, but it is always something that I'm just like, just don't look, just press cash out and don't look at it and it'll be fine. It's done. Is it over?
But I think no matter what, and this is true to form, like you said, press the button no matter what. We just love what they're doing. And that's why it's easy to collect almost 200 notebooks of different sizes
Yeah.
that you have. Is like, that's love, that's fandom. Like when you find something that you really like, I think you will spend a little bit more on something like that because you know it's quality at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's the thing. I want to support the people who have supported us, being able to be part of the ambassador team, be part of like their growth and journey and such. And I think that following along with Archer and Olive for as long as we have, you have gotten to see that kind of like, I feel like it's like Archer and Olive lore, like when you were here for the first sub box or the first release of the acrylographs or like when they first brought out the calligraphs or anything. It's like we've been part of the journey, even if it's only from the sidelines going like, woo, yeah, give me some more notebooks or whatever. But being able to see that evolution is the word I was thinking of, going from the individual icon on the front to now the full cover designs to the release of the new pens and then bringing in washi and stickers and everything else they're doing. It's great. We're diehard fans. You already knew it. But we would love to hear from you, Planner Pals. What are your favorite notebook brands? What are the ones that you can't say no to? The ones that you're going to go back to time and time again? Let us know here on the comments if you're on YouTube, or you can email us at plannerpalspodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Instagram at plannerpalspodcast.
I can't wait to hear from you all in the comments, of course, to share new things because we're going to be in those comments and I'm going to be looking things up. I've got store credit, so I have stuff that I have to buy. I know I just got rid of a bunch of stuff, but like I'm always on the look for something cool and new. So until next time, Planner Pals, have a good one. Thanks for watching.